You're on.
Hi guys, I'm here at the Bible lesson. So tonight we are going to be reading about the Last Supper. The golden text tonight is 1 Corinthians 11:28. Says, "And when he had given thanks, he brake it and said, 'Take, eat, this is my body, which is broken for you. This do in remembrance of me.'" Okay, and the scriptures tonight is going to be Matthew 26, verses 17 through 30. And I'll read them all right now. Is that all that's on our show?
Yep.
Okay, so this board's done. Do you guys like me using the board so you can see it too? I think it's nice. I wanted to get one so you guys can see what we'll be doing and stuff. Okay, time. The evening of the day before the crucifixion. So they're having the Last Supper, then Jesus is crucified the next day. So Jesus' heart is really heavy because he knows what's about to happen to him. So he goes and prays a lot to God about it. Place, an upper room in Jerusalem where they're having their Last Supper. And I already read the golden text. So now I will read Matthew 26, 17 through 30. Now the first day of the feast of unleavened bread, the disciples came to Jesus, saying unto him, "Where wilt thou that we prepare for thee to eat the Passover?" And he said, "Go into the city to such a man, and say unto him, The Master saith, My time is at hand. I will keep the Passover at thy house with my disciples." And the disciples did as Jesus had appointed them, and they made ready the Passover. Now when the evening was come, he sat down with the 12. And as they did eat, he said, "Verily I say unto you, that one of you shall betray me." And they were exceedingly sorrowful, and began every one of them to say unto him, "Lord, is it I?" And he answered and said, "He that dippeth his hand with me in the dish, the same shall betray me. The Son of Man goeth, as it is written of him. But woe unto that man by whom the Son of Man is betrayed. It had been good for that man if he had never been born." Then Judas, which betrayed him, answered and said, "Master, is it I?" He said unto him, "Thou hast said." And as they were eating, Jesus took bread and blessed it, and brake it, and gave it to the disciples, and said, "Take, eat, this is my body." And he took the cup, and gave thanks, and gave it to them, saying, "Drink ye all of it, for this is my blood of the new covenant, which is shed for many for the remission of sins. But I say unto you, I will not drink henceforth of this fruit of the vine until that day when I drink it new with you in my Father's kingdom." And when they had sung a hymn, they went out into the Mount of Olives. And that was all of Matthew was reading today. And now we're going to go further into the story here of Jesus and the Last Supper. There were 7 days in which the Jews ate their unleavened bread. During this time, the Passover was celebrated. Unleavened bread did not have yeast in it or anything to ferment it. You remember the reason for eating this bread was to keep the Jews reminded of the time they were delivered from Egyptian bondage. They left in such great haste that they did not have time to mix the leaven with the dough. The residents of Jerusalem were very free in offering their homes to strangers for the feast. Each company might consist of fewer than 10 people. But it was not to be more than enough to eat the lamb that was prepared for the feast. Jesus had bitter enemies in Jerusalem. You know, the teachers of the law, the Sadducees, the Pharisees, all the ones wanting to kill him. Jesus had bitter enemies in Jerusalem who wanted to kill him. It was the time of a great religious feast called Passover, and people came in great crowds. People came in great crowds. Sorry, this book's messed up. To Jerusalem to celebrate it. There had to be preparations made for the feast. Years ago, before the children of Israel left Egypt, God told Moses the people should take a lamb according to their families. If there happened to be some left over, it had to be burned with fire. The blood of the lamb was put on the lintel and the 2 side posts of the door. Remember what I told you about the Passover? Why they celebrate the Passover? That's because death passed over when they was in Egypt. He told the Israelites the firstborn will die tonight. The angel of death would come take all the firstborns, and took Pharaoh's son too, but he told the Israelites to put lamb's blood above their door and death would pass over them, and it did. Pharaoh's son was taken. Then he released them, but then came after them again. But God didn't let that happen. Okay. Home that night saw the blood that had been applied to the Israelites' houses and passed over them. They were to keep the Passover feast in remembrance of this time, and they were to keep it forever. Jesus' blood was about to be shed for the sins of the whole world, but he did not spend the time grieving. He kept this ordinance. He was not interested in eating it with the chief priests in a palace or with a crowd at some other place. He wanted to eat it with his disciples where they would not be disturbed. He had eaten with the disciples before, so that was not so special, but it was the Last Supper he would eat with them. The disciples came to Jesus and asked, "Where wilt thou that we prepare for thee to eat the Passover?" Jesus did not own a house in Jerusalem or in any other place. He had friends in Bethany and had eaten supper with them not long before this, but now he was nearing the time when he would be crucified, and they were in Jerusalem. However, he knew at least one man who his disciples' friend in the city where they were at this time. He said to the disciples, "Go into the city to such a man, and say unto him, The Master saith, My time is at hand. I will keep the Passover at thy house with my disciples." They found the house, and the owner let them use one of the rooms. The upper room was clean and ready, as if the man knew Jesus would want it. Bread and grape juice. The disciples got the lamb and prepared it for the feast. They had the bread and grape juice ready. Then they, no doubt, went back to be with Jesus. Late in the afternoon, Jesus and the disciples made their way to the upper room, where the supper was waiting. As they were eating, Jesus said something that made them sit up and listen. Imagine how surprised they all were, all except Judas Iscariot, as Jesus said, "One of you shall betray me." The thought probably ran through their minds, "Oh no, not me. I wouldn't think of doing a thing like that. Surely he does not mean me. It just couldn't be me." To Jesus, each one of the disciples said, "Lord, is it I?" Jesus answered, "He that dippeth his hand with me in the dish, the same shall betray me." All the disciples had dipped into the dish, since there were no forks or spoons. So Jesus did not point out which one would be betrayed, which one would be the betrayer. Mark tells us that Jesus said, "It is the one of the 12 that dippeth with me in the dish." Luke says, "The hand of him that betrayeth me is with me on the table." They may have all had their hands on the table, but when Jesus said what he said, don't you imagine they jerked them off the table very quickly? If they had looked around, they might have seen that Judas still had his hands on the table, but he promptly took them off as soon as he realized what Jesus said. He did not let on to anyone that he was not a friend to Jesus anymore. Jesus was kind to him and treated him as a friend. And no doubt when he looked at Judas, he looked with sadness in his eyes that caused Judas to look the other way. This is going on in the upper room right now. And Jesus, of course, being so kind to him and looking at him like that because he knows what Judas is about to do. How could Judas go through with that? He had all that chance to change his mind. But he didn't. He didn't. Jesus told them how awful it would be for the man who would betray him. He said it had been good for that man if he had never been born. Judas had bargained with the chief priest to betray Jesus for 30 pieces of silver. He came to the supper just like he was one of Jesus' good friends. And Jesus did not only treat him as a friend, he was a brother to Jesus. Because we're all brothers and sisters, the children of God. I don't know why or how he would do this. I mean, if he needed money or something, Jesus would have took care of him. I just don't understand it. Being there, eating supper together with them, supposed to be God-fearing, knows Jesus is the Son of God, and yet betrays him. Just so sad. Jesus told them how, if the other disciples heard his answer, they did not understand, because when Jesus told Judas to go, they thought he was sending him to buy something for the supper or to give something to the poor, because Judas was in charge of the money. Jesus had given the sop to Judas, according to John's account of this supper. According to Oriental rules, giving the sop to another is the sign that the person who receives it is a friend. Jesus was standing at the door of Judas's heart, holding out to him the opportunity to repent. Judas, however, was unwilling to open that door. Although he had opened it to Satan, the devil had stood knocking at his heart, tempting him with money. Because Judas yielded, he was an easy prey of the tempter, of the devil, Satan. The chief priests had not come to Judas asking what he wanted for betraying Jesus, but Judas had gone to them. It was a sad meal that day. Jesus was soon to leave them. While they ate, Jesus took some bread and blessed it. Then he broke it into pieces and said as he passed it to the disciples, "Take, eat, this is my body." The broken bread was an emblem of Jesus' broken body. They did not break his bones, but his body was beaten and bruised. His skin was broken by the whip, and he was scourged. still don't get why they did that to him. Why not just crucify him? Why do they gotta torture him first? And then torture the ones on the cross by breaking their legs. They need some justice to be treated that way. He came with a message for all whose hearts were weary and whose minds were dark. His life gladdened other lives. Then he gave that life that he might live eternally, that we might live eternally. In remembering how he suffered for us, it will give us patience under persecution, strength in temptation, and victory in death. If you have been forgiven of your sins and are obeying him, don't sit back and be an onlooker when communion is being taken, but remember that he said this, "Do in remembrance of me." Jesus took the cup of grape juice, which they called the fruit of the vine, and gave thanks. Then he gave it to the disciples to drink. "Drink ye all of it, for this is my blood of the New Testament, which is shed for many for the remission of sins." Jesus was telling them that his body would be broken and his blood would be shed for the forgiveness of sins. After they had finished, they sang a hymn and went out into the Mount of Olives. Is this the end of it? Yep. So that's it. So you know what's coming next. This is the Last Supper. Jesus thought this is the last night he's going to, live. He'll be crucified soon. Probably, I'm saying, in the next reading here. Jesus at Gethsemane. So be prepared for that in the Bible lesson. I'm going to go get all this stuff set up. I got a lot of stuff to do here. I always do. Got a lot of stuff. I got to get stuff ready for the Bible reading, the Bible study, and the Bible lesson, and get the video shared. Get stuff wrote on the board. I like to go through like the Bible devotions and the animal devotions and the Bible lesson, by marking with highlighter and stuff, important points that I want to get across. So I'm not really ready for it. Reading about him getting beaten and spit on and whipped and hung on the cross. I don't like to see that part or read it. It makes me sad and mad. Because why did they have to torture him before they crucified him? Why did Pilate let that happen? He knew Jesus was innocent. Why did he have them do that or let them do that before they crucified him? Why couldn't they just crucify him? But they didn't. Alright guys, so I'm going to go get everything set up. I hope you guys have a great rest of your night. Let's bring those souls to Jesus. And God willing, we'll see you guys again tomorrow with another Bible reading, Bible study, and Bible lesson. Bye guys. God bless. Good night.